Some secrets don't stay buried forever. Jane thought she could hide her past, lock away her struggles, and pretend she was the perfect wife and mother. She believed that love, family, and routine would keep her demons at bay. But deception, no matter how carefully crafted, has a way of unraveling at the worst possible moment. When the truth surfaced, Jane lost everything: her husband, her children, and the life she had built on lies. Could she ever find redemption? Or was she destined to be haunted by the consequences of her choices? Jane and Jerry had what many considered the perfect marriage. They lived in a beautiful home, had 2 wonderful children, and were admired by friends and family. Jane was known as a devoted wife and mother, always making sure everything ran smoothly in their household. She cooked Jerry's favorite meals, helped their children with homework, and ensured their home was a place of warmth and comfort. Jerry, on the other hand, was a hard-working and ambitious man. He was a senior project manager at a construction firm, respected for his dedication and integrity. He worked long hours to provide the best life for his family, making sure they lacked nothing. Every summer he took Jane and the kids on vacation, treating them to the best experiences money could buy. But beneath the surface, Jane carried a secret she had never dared to tell Jerry. She had struggled with an uncontrollable desire since her teenage years. In high school, she was expelled after being caught in intimate encounters with multiple boys. Her parents were devastated, but chose to believe it was just youthful recklessness. However, the pattern continued into her university years. She was once again expelled after an affair with a lecturer was exposed. Her parents covered for her, hoping she would change, but deep down, Jane knew something was wrong with her. She hoped that marriage and family would be the answer, that Jerry's love and her role as a mother would suppress her urges. For the first few years of marriage, Jane stayed true to her promise to herself. She focused on her family and worked as an administrative officer in a reputable company. But as time passed, the old desires resurfaced. It started with small temptations, flirtatious conversations with coworkers, lingering glances, the thrill of secrecy. Then she gave in. First, it was an affair with her pastor, a man she had once respected for his spiritual guidance. Then, shockingly, she seduced her own cousin, an act that left her drowning in guilt but unable to stop. The addiction to forbidden encounters consumed her. She became skilled at deception. She could kiss Jerry goodnight, whisper words of love, and still make excuses to sneak away to meet another man. At times, she convinced herself that she could stop whenever she wanted, but deep down, she knew she was trapped in a cycle she could not break. The thrill, the secrecy, the danger, it all fueled an insatiable hunger she couldn't control. Jane justified her actions by blaming her condition. "It's not my fault," she told herself. "I was born this way." But guilt still gnawed at her, especially when she looked into the innocent eyes of her children. She loved them. She loved Jerry. But love alone wasn't enough to stop her. Then came the day that changed everything. At Jane's workplace, a new employee named Sam had just been hired. He was young, charming, and confident. The moment Jane met him, she felt an instant attraction. She tried to resist, telling herself she wouldn't repeat her past mistakes. But as days turned into weeks, the temptation became unbearable. Their conversations turned flirtatious, then suggestive. One afternoon, when the office was quiet, Jane lured Sam into the storage room. What was meant to be a secret remained hidden until it wasn't. The company had recently installed security cameras to monitor unauthorized activities, in restricted areas. A routine surveillance check led to the shocking discovery of Jane's encounter with Sam. The executives were appalled. Jane, a senior employee with years of service, had been caught in an inappropriate act at work. News of the footage spread like wildfire, and she was immediately suspended. Jerry was puzzled when Jane suddenly started staying home. She claimed she was on leave, but something about her explanation didn't sit right with him. She had been distant lately, avoiding long conversations, her once joyful demeanor replaced with nervous tension. At night, she barely slept, tossing and turning, dreading the moment Jerry would discover the truth. But the truth has a way of revealing itself. Suspicious of her behavior, Jerry decided to visit her workplace to get answers. Sitting in the manager's office, his heart pounded as he watched the security footage. His hands trembled. His breath came in short gasps. The woman on the screen, his wife, was betraying him in the worst way possible. Jerry had been faithful to Jane from the moment they met. He had turned down advances from beautiful women, had kept his vows sacred, only to be humiliated like this. As he drove home, rage and heartbreak battled within him. He had spent a decade believing he had the perfect wife, the perfect marriage. Had everything been a lie? When he arrived home, Jane was in the kitchen preparing dinner, unaware of the storm about to hit. The moment she saw Jerry's face, the color drained from hers. She knew. He knew. "Tell me it's not true," Jerry said, his voice barely above a whisper. Jane dropped the knife she was holding. Tears welled in her eyes as she shook her head. I never wanted you to find out this way." Jerry clenched his fists. "Why, Jane? Why did you do this to me? To us? To our family?" Through her sobs, Jane finally confessed. She told him everything. Her past, her struggles, her failed attempts to control herself. But the more she spoke, the more disgusted Jerry felt. It wasn't just the affair with Sam. It was the lies, the betrayal, the fact that she had never trusted him enough to tell him the truth before marriage. His voice was sharp, laced with pain. "So, you were never the woman I thought you were." Jane dropped to her knees, gripping his hand. "I love you, Jerry. I love our family. Please, don't leave me." But Jerry pulled away. His love for her had been deep, but now it was drowning under the weight of betrayal. He took out his phone and dialed Jane's parents. "Did you know about this?" he asked, his voice shaking. Silence. Then her mother's hesitant voice. "We thought she had changed." Jerry let out a bitter laugh. "You should have told me. I deserved to know." Jane's father tried to intervene, but Jerry had heard enough. He ended the call and turned to Jane one last time. "I gave you my heart, my loyalty, my everything, and you threw it all away." That night, Jerry packed a bag. He didn't yell, didn't argue, he just left. The children were asleep when he walked out, oblivious to the storm that had shattered their home. Jane sat on the cold floor, sobbing uncontrollably. She had known this day would come. She had known the truth would surface. But she had never been prepared for the weight of losing everything she had taken for granted. The next morning, Jane woke up to an empty bed, an empty house, and an empty heart. For the first time in her life, she realized what true loneliness felt like. Outside, life continued. The sun rose, birds chirped, people went about their day. But inside Jane's world, time had stopped. She had lost everything, her husband, her children's trust, her reputation, and she had no idea how to start again. Jerry moved out that night, taking the children with him. Jane sat alone in their bedroom, staring at the empty space where he had once slept. The silence was suffocating. The home that once felt warm and full of life now felt like a lifeless shell. She had destroyed everything. The realization hit her like a wave, crashing over her, leaving her breathless. She had known that her actions carried risks, but she had never truly believed she would lose everything. The next few days were unbearable. Jane reached for her phone countless times, typing and deleting messages to Jerry. She called him, but he never answered. She visited her children's school just to catch a glimpse of them, but Jerry had warned the teachers not to let her near. She was now a stranger to the family she once held dear. Her parents called, urging her to return home, but she couldn't face them. How could she? They had covered for her mistakes before, hoping she would change, but now she had proven to everyone, including herself, that she was broken beyond repair. She had nowhere to run, no one to turn to. She spent her days in isolation, replaying the past in her mind. She thought about her childhood, about the first time she realized she was different, the shame she had felt when she was expelled in high school, the look of disappointment in her father's eyes when she was kicked out of university, the fear that had gripped her when she realized she couldn't control herself. But this was different. This was worse. Jerry had been her last hope, the one person she believed would never leave her. And now he was gone. Late one night, as Jane lay awake in bed, she thought about ending it all. What was left for her? No husband, no children, no job, no respect. She had destroyed everything she had built. The thought of disappearing felt like an escape, one final way to stop hurting the people she loved. But as the thought crossed her mind, so did the image of her children. They may have been taken from her, but she was still their mother. And if there was even the slightest chance she could make things right, she had to try. The next morning, Jane picked herself up and made a decision. She needed help. Jane walked into a therapist's office for the first time in her life. She had avoided seeking help for years, convinced she could control herself. But she had lost that illusion now. She needed to understand why she had destroyed everything she loved, why the thrill of secrecy had been stronger than the love she had for her family. Therapy was difficult. Talking about her past, reliving her worst moments, admitting to her deepest failures, it felt like opening old wounds and letting them bleed. But for the first time, she wasn't running. She was facing the truth. She learned that her struggles weren't just impulsive actions. They were rooted in deep-seated emotional scars, fears of abandonment, and an inability to connect love with stability. She had been chasing highs to fill an emptiness she never understood. Her affairs had never been about pleasure. They had been about escape. Months passed, and slowly, Jane began to heal. She still had urges, but she was learning to recognize them, to control them rather than letting them control her. She learned new ways to cope with the void inside her, ways that didn't involve destroying her life. She attended support groups, surrounded herself with people who understood her struggles, and slowly started to build herself back up. One afternoon, as she sat in a small coffee shop, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Jerry. Jerry, you can see the kids this weekend, but only for a few hours. Jane's hands trembled as she read the message. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. Tears welled in her eyes, not from sadness, but from hope. When Saturday arrived, Jane stood outside Jerry's house, her heart racing. She knocked softly, and after a few moments, Jerry opened the door. He didn't smile, didn't invite her in, but he stepped aside, allowing their children to run into her arms. She held them tightly, her heart swelling with emotion. This was her second chance, not at marriage, but at being the mother they deserved. She looked up at Jerry, her voice soft. "Thank you." Jerry nodded, but said nothing. He wasn't ready to forgive her, and Jane knew she might never earn his forgiveness. But that didn't matter. What mattered was that she was trying, that she was no longer running from the truth. As she walked away with her children, she felt the warmth of the sun on her face. For the first time in a long time, Jane believed she had a chance to start over. The road ahead was long, and the wounds she had caused would take years to heal. But she wasn't giving up. Not this time. And with that, she took her first step forward. The story of Jane is a cautionary tale about the consequences of secrecy, self-deception, and unaddressed personal struggles. One of the greatest lessons here is that honesty and self-awareness are key to maintaining healthy relationships. Jane's unwillingness to acknowledge and confront her struggles before marriage led to a cycle of destruction that not only affected her, but also hurt the people she loved most. True love and commitment are built on honesty. When partners are open about their struggles, it creates a foundation of trust and allows them to support each other. Hiding deep personal issues often leads to betrayal and heartbreak. If Jane had shared her struggles with Jerry before marriage, they could have sought help together. Personal struggles are easier to manage when you have a partner who understands and supports you. Carrying secrets alone only deepens the problem. When issues remain hidden, they eventually explode in ways that can tear families apart. Being upfront allows for solutions before things spiral out of control. Admitting a problem is the first step to solving it. Jane only sought help after losing everything. If she had sought therapy earlier, she might have saved her marriage. If you struggle with issues beyond your control, don't wait for them to ruin your life. Seek professional help. No matter how difficult, be honest with your spouse about your past and personal struggles. Instead of making excuses, own up to your mistakes and actively work towards bettering yourself. No matter how much you love someone, betrayal can break them beyond repair. Think before you act. Even when everything falls apart, redemption is possible. Like Jane, take steps toward healing and rebuilding your life. Please do not forget to subscribe, share, and click on the notification bell for updates.